Hi, everybody, and welcome to session 3 of the first day of our Open Future Forum. Today's topic and theme is around civic infrastructure, and this particular session is a global roundtable of demonstration projects in the realm of civic infrastructure. We'll be doing global roundtables and demonstration projects each day on each of the themes, but I'm very happy to welcome you all here. For those who've been on the journey with us so far and started with the opening session, thanks so much for joining us for today. And those of you just joining and jumping in, welcome. And it's been a real honor. I genuinely feel joy in my heart of all these incredible people who've gathered, and we're only on session 3. We have about 20 more to go. So I'm just thrilled by all these conversations, and I look forward to this one especially. Before we kick off with this particular conversation, I do want to go ahead and thank the co-conveners that have helped make what we're doing possible. So I'm just going to name and thank the American Sustainable Business Network, Bluefin Investment, Eco Restoration Alliance, El Puente, Global Unity, the Guild of Future Architects, many of you represented here, Heartland P5, which we'll get to hear from later, Imagine World, Institute of Ecotechnics, Intergen Family, Kinship Earth, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, which if you want to hear more about our birthing project with them, tomorrow we'll be doing a session on our partnership with them. Partnerships for Change, Pro Social World, who's here in the space, thank you. Reconsider, Toxic Free Future for Our Children, who's here as well. Hi, Anne, nice to see you. Triangle Foundation, United Refuge, and so many more. We're just feeling so incredibly grateful for the amount of partnership and collaboration, and so many of you are here connected to all these networks. So thank you for being here today. And I am going to go ahead and hand that off to Katie to moderate today's session. Welcome and thank you.
Thanks, Jamaica, and thank you all. I think that the topic of civic infrastructure in particular is such an interesting lens as we look at whole systems, because sometimes when we talk about these big concepts of climate or wellness or food systems, it can seem very abstract. And when we start to bring it into the built environment, it starts to become very concrete. And you start to see, oh, we have housing that's across the street from childcare and they need food, and how will they get energy? And we really quickly start to do cross-sectoral weaving, whether that's the intent or not. And so I'm really excited to enter today's dialogue with such a range of examples. I think that this is also a context for a discussion around how the context of our structural environment so meaningfully intertwines with our social contexts and vice versa, which is why I'm so pleased today to have practitioners that span from the spaces of building materials and architecture and community development through lenses like the environment and health and equity, to inquiries around what makes a compassionate city, or how do we cultivate a well-being economy. So we'll be weaving across these various concepts today, and hopefully give us some good examples to then dive into some time for a juicy discussion. Today we'll be hearing from Alen from SUDA LLC on the LEAP standards that he and his team have been developing, and Helmke from Compassionate San Antonio, Tyler Wood from Carbotura and Hot Planet Repair, Tayyib Smith from Growth Collective, Laura Burgis from Human Values Center, Madebo Fatunde from IFAfrica. And Madebo may be able to join, so we'll just verify once he's in here. Karuna Warren from WaterNow, Alexander Svechenko from Restart Ukraine, Dr. Gajanan Sabhahit from Sri Sathya Sai Premaarpitham Foundation, Deborah Marton from Van Alen Institute, and Bob Berkebile from Heartland P5 and BNIM Architects. So we'll be going through in that order, but you don't have to memorize it. I'll kind of prompt each of you when it's your turn. So we'll be doing a cycle of kind of 7 to 10 minute spotlights on each of your work, and then we'll have time for discussion and questions thereafter. So first, we're going to kick off with Alen. Over to you, Alen.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Alen. I'm the managing partner for Strategic Urban Development Alliance, and also founder of the LEAP initiative, Leadership in Engineering Equitable Participation. Am I able to share a screen?
Yes.
It looks like I can. What LEAP is, real quick, is LEAP is a certification initiative that we're putting together to be as concise as I can. LEAP is to equitable participation. What LEAD is to environmental sustainability. It's a program that really seeks to integrate into the fabric of the creation of the built environment, equitable and participatory activities that will assure that projects get built with a level of social responsibility. And it provides ultimately not only a way to differentiate your project and evaluate your project, based on its impact on local communities, but also a playbook for how to achieve these objectives. And based on decisions that people make, they'll be able to have a cumulative score, which will then lead to a certification of bronze, silver, gold, platinum. We're in many ways looking at the LEAD initiative and the LEAD rating as a model for how we go about that same process of being able to ensure environmental sustainability, but again, only ours is focusing on social equity. And what does that mean? That means a focus on employment and career development. And all of these things are before, during, and after the development process. It's focusing on employment and career activities, focusing on fostering small business participation and utilization, making sure that we have workforce housing and some level of affordability, or that we're supporting housing that basically is going to be impacted by whatever that facility is, or build project that we're going about. We want to make sure that we promote and we support ownership and intergenerational wealth creation and transfer. And we want to make sure that we do everything in an environmentally just and sustainable way, and make sure that our projects help to contribute to and not imperil mental health, physical health, and well-being. And those are our big objectives with the LEAP initiative. We do the way that we go about making sure that that happens is we engage in collaborations with different educational programs, both vocational, business, programs that help inform people about how to manage their wealth. We make sure that project sponsors provide support to those organizations, both financially, as well as leverage their projects to help in the mission of educating and informing people of what a project will bring about in many different ways. So training and education is one part of it. We make sure that we provide funding support to to help these community development features be included in projects. We make sure that we build into our projects the ability to help community leaders facilitate grants, tax credit opportunities, for example. We use tools like New Markets tax credits, opportunity zones, enhanced infrastructure finance district funding, and just making sure that we integrate that in as a way of making these initiatives financially practical and achievable. We also make sure that our program involves structuring of transactions. You know, when we're out hiring our architect, when we're hiring our contractor, when we're hiring, you know, people that maintain the building, there's this intentionality that happens from the earliest stages, analogous to the way that we, you know, structure in certain things. For example, you know, when we hire a architect, we know that there's going to be a project that's designed with a LEED certification. We know that there's going to be things such as ADA compliance, and we want to make equity and inclusion as intentional of a feature as those other aspects of how we go about acquiring our projects. And so there's a lot that we do to make sure that all of our vendors, subcontractors, and folks integrate those outcomes into how they do business. The other thing that we do is we want to make sure that our projects deploy technology, and development is a big deployer of technology in many different aspects, you know, from how we heat and cool our building to, you know, different technologies for how we communicate from our buildings. And what we try to do is, again, with a level of early intentionality, expose the local communities and underutilized people to those technologies and innovations of the future. That's one of the best ways to get inclusion and do it in a manner that is creating these long-term impacts and not displacing others. So all of these things that I'm sharing, you know, are things that we have a lot more detail about how we go into it. These, I'm getting on the major overall highlights of the program. But finally, the most important is early community intensive engagement. And we get involved in community engagement in many formats. In, you know, our projects, before we start designing, oftentimes when we have a site, we invite members of the community, a number of different forums, formats. Sometimes we have big events on a quarterly basis. We have community advisory groups that meet at least once monthly. And we make sure that people are aware, first of all, that we have this site, that we're looking at what to build. We hear people's concerns. We hear what their fears are. We hear what their ideas are. And after that intensive process, we come back and we tell them what we think we heard. We use a number of different, you know, best practices to make sure that we've communicated properly, heard people's ideas. And then only then, after that type of process, do we start our building and design. And, you know, at that point, you have this community. Typically what that yields is, you know, community support for your project, because you have the ability with some level of credibility to show that what you've built includes their ideas and best thinking. And I'll tell you, my experience has been that that community participation yields a lot of great development ideas. So just to close it out, to tell you, we're piloting these projects on about 15 million square feet of development right now in Oakland that I have some level of leadership in terms of partnerships. We have a project in 19th Street, downtown Oakland, at the West Oakland BART station, now at the Coliseum. These are all projects that are transit-oriented development. And they're going to be great projects of impact and scale that will allow for us to basically implement all these things that we're talking about right now. And as we go forward, we've already been yielding really great beneficial impacts, getting through our planning processes with little community resistance, if any at all. And that is worth money. So I'm going to kind of put a wrap on it with that. These are just, again, some of the projects that we're implementing on, and in the interest of time, I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Thank you.
I will give back the screen here. There you go.
Thank you, Alen. It's not accidental that we started with LEAP standards and then are closing the roundtable with someone who was instrumental in LEAD standards. I'm looking forward to the conversation that follows that. Next, I'm going to hand it off to Anne Helmke with Compassionate San Antonio.
Thanks, Katie. There are a lot of words that I heard Alen use that overlap, and that excites me because then the actions as well are similar yet different. But I think some of the process is very similar, and I think probably the most important parts to hear. Things like intentionality, community, collaboratives, equity, inclusivity. My role with the city of San Antonio is, I think about it as a bridge person. And so that's one of the things that I have really recognized in our work towards resilience is the importance of having bridge people who bridge from one thing to another thing. And that helps in building resiliency. I'm a Lutheran minister, and I work for the city of San Antonio as the faith liaison. And so Compassionate San Antonio falls within my role and responsibility. I'm a bridge person. I'm a really good example of that. In fact, most of my days are more in community than they are in terms of government. There's some real basics underneath all that we do that in one sense, to some might seem not as important, but we have found here that they are essential and foundational. And we also have a mayor that supports that in things that folks don't normally talk about when they're building. But one of which, and I'm going to share a screen, is that our underlying value system is on the ethic of reciprocity. And that this speaks not only to the projects that we do, but also in terms of the policies that our city council passes and how those are written. And so that ethic, many of you, all of you might recognize as treating others and the planet as you wish to be treated yourself. And we translate that constantly, creating policies for others as we would wish our family members to have policies and procedures set up, to form collaborations, to be included as we wish to be included. So this value, this ethic of reciprocity is foundational to what we're doing in San Antonio and how we operate. It's connected to a much larger, which is also very critical in terms of creating a resilient community, that we are connected to something much larger than ourselves, right? And so as a compassionate city, we're connected to the Charter for Compassion, the International Charter for Compassion. And when San Antonio became a compassionate city, there were about 100 cities globally, compassionate cities. There are now approximately 450. So our city is connected to something much larger. And neuroscience tells us that humans commit, invest when they know that they're a part of something larger than themselves. They also commit when they know that they have agency to make a difference and to take action in the change, which is part of the compassion skill sets. Compassion and how it operates, it's towards ourselves, that we treat ourselves in compassionate ways, but that we also treat others that way. And I think this is the most critical one for the work that we've been doing, that we're able to look within systems and be able to map those out, and how we can be more compassionate towards an entire system, and that the system itself can become more compassionate. I think one of the things that has happened in terms of much larger cities and communities, there's so many of the things that we're addressing are so large that we think we have to figure out the whole picture, and it's just overwhelming. And we still do that, frankly. We have a really big, thick thing about changing our housing needs here, but we also look at very small things, and how can we look at a system and perhaps interject something that will have a ripple effect and change the entire system and correct its trajectory forward. So that ethic of reciprocity really is foundational to everything that we do. The other thing that I heard in Alan's as well, but is the importance of collaboration. Historical and recent research tells us that the reason we're still alive as a species on this planet isn't because of the survival of the fittest, but because of collaborations. And so a lot of our work is based on collaboration. And when I'm talking about collaboration, I'm trying to find it. I want to bring it up on the screen. I'm talking about intentional collaborations, that these are cross-pollinizing. I'm going to get there, because Jeff's wondering if I'm going to get there too, because I want to show this from Pro-Social, because they have a really great example, a drawing of what I'm trying to express, and not very well at this moment, because I'm just trying to get it up on the screen, right? So we form intentional collaboratives when something comes forward. And I already kind of mentioned the housing, so I'll just use that for now. But we have a housing via the faith community collaborative, and that individual group is working on activating and encouraging congregations that have available properties, available facilities that are empty, that could be refit, but that property could be built on. We've computed some numbers. We have about 3,500 available acres on congregational properties here in San Antonio that could house 100,000 units. And our need right now is at 28,000. So you take those kind of numbers and you ask yourself, why aren't we doing it, right? Let's just do this thing. And so we have found such value in these collaboratives that include like faith and civic leaders. It includes home builders, contractors. It includes our area foundation and their concern for senior citizens. It includes our NASA Association in terms of mental illness and those needs. And so it's the community working together. But then we have currently about 18 different collaboratives. And so again, I think that this diagram really tells us how that works, that there's then this growing awareness among us. The benefits package is that we form these really great relationships and we're able to resource and do things more efficiently and effectively, but how that then changes and impacts our culture. And frankly, that's what we're most interested in, is a cultural shift. The other thing is to utilize tools that we have available to us, or find out about tools. And there's one in particular that we utilize that I just couldn't do what I do without this a tool that we've developed within the city, and it's called the Equity Atlas. And you can just Google it online, Equity Atlas San Antonio, Texas, and this will come up. And so this is our city with some of the different demographics. You can look at it in lots of different ways. This one that we're looking at includes race, income, schooling, education, but different. This is the collective map. And so when we are focusing our projects and efforts, we begin the pilots always in areas where folks are most vulnerable and most impacted. And so the thinking behind that and the knowing is if you start close to the ground where those needs are highest, it will have a ripple effect that impacts the entire community. So this has been just a really important tool that was put together by our equity office. And so utilizing the tools that different sectors might bring into a collaborative that you might not have on your own is instrumental to making that kind of cultural shift that you might be looking for and to build on that resiliency. The only other thing, and then I'm going to hold my time, but I think it was Gandhi who said something like, you don't have a community without communications. And we already heard that from Alen as well. So the important role of communicating, and communicating. And collaboratives help do that, but so does technology. And I think I'll take one more minute and I'm going to show you an example of our technology that has just been groundbreaking in our efforts. But as many might experience in other communities, it's how to find resources available to anybody. I don't know why this, there we go. And so this particular site, we pronounce it sacred, but it's one E short there, but it's the San Antonio Community Resource Directory. But this was totally put together by volunteer San Antonians. And it's won 2 awards now. In terms of anyone, this would be like navigators and professionals, but this would be moms and dads. Anybody can go into this and find those large entities that can help, that we know a lot about, but also very small entities. Could be a congregation that could maybe only help 2 to 4 families maybe, but that would make all the difference in the world to those couple of families. And none, even 211, all of those, none of them go that deep into community. And so this may look like a directory, and we call it a directory, but it is something that really communicates and connects community and puts that agency right into the hands of the people who need these resources. So I'm going to pass it off to the next person.
Thanks so much, Anne. Can't wait to get to the discussion piece. Handing it off next to Tyler Wood from Carbotura and Hot Planet Repair.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Tyler Wood. I'm the Director of ESG and Sustainability with Gravitas Infinitum. It's an impact holding company. Carbotura is one of the main companies in our holding company, including Hot Planet Repair Team, which is a nonprofit with some just incredible people from around the world that want to focus on planet repair. I'm going to get into this this presentation and some of the discussion pieces earlier in today, talking about technology specifically. I think you'll really appreciate what you're about to see here. Let me just, there we go. This is a letter from our CEO, Alan Witters. We're based here in Naples, Florida, but our operations we're deploying globally. And essentially what we've done is there's out of the whole world economy, only 8.6% of it is circular. So you have what's called the circularity gap. We are producing just tremendous amounts of waste, both solid waste and atmospheric. So about 2 billion tons a year of solid waste. Unfortunately, there's about 30 times that actually going into the atmosphere. So we've got some serious waste issues to be addressing and untrashing the planet, both land, sea, and air. And so these are our first principles. And what we're deploying right now, we're not looking, from some of the discussions earlier was about funding. We have permanent financing to scale these globally. I joke that I spent the last 4 years searching for cash, and now I'm searching for trash. So we're going to recycle everything with zero waste and zero emissions. Everybody knows the problems that everybody's seeing with the piling up of landfills everywhere. Many people here on this call already know the dire situation we're in. Basically, our business model is we can take 500 to 10,000 tons per day per facility. We're available globally, and it takes about 12 months from contract to first services. We also provide landfill mining, and we also provide specialized waste handling, waste elimination, tires, plastics, agricultural wastes, bulk wastes. And I'm going to go into just a bit of an outline. We have basically two different divisions, and then the combination of the two. Zero fill is a virtual landfill. Biocarbon is similar to a bioenergy carbon capture and storage, but it's more advanced than that, because some of the detractors of bioenergy carbon capture and storage is the extensive monocropping and use of land, water, biodiversity. Biocarbon facilities take up about 5 acres, with the equivalent of 25,000 outdoor agricultural acres for capturing carbon and creating nanobiomaterials. And then third is just a combination of the two, with focus of fuels, electricity, narrow band materials, as well as advanced materials, graphite, graphene, and diamonds. This is an example of what we're deploying globally right now. This is the recyclotron. This does 100 tons a day of municipal solid waste, or all waste, basically biomass, anything. These are microwave reactors, basically processing it, breaking things down at the nano level. We have microwave multi-phase generators, where you've got the energy for putting about a megawatt of energy through the system. Here we've got material streams condensing out to 16 streams. We keep it kind of simple, but it can get up to 16 streams. Here's the fuel collection, and here's the zero emissions gas turbine generators. We're working with some of the larger turbine makers in the world. And so basically, all municipal solid waste going through the recyclotron, creating renewable materials, and then thousands of post-processed materials on the other end. This is an example of a 2,000 ton per day facility. We're deploying 5 of these in India over the next couple of years. That each 5,000 ton or 2,000 ton per day facility takes up about 3 acres, so not much land. And then post-processing, you've got some storage and some logistics. And on the front end of materials handling, depending on where we are for landfill mining or taking direct tipping, there'll be other footprint considerations. But each 2,000 ton per day facility can generate up to 30 megawatts of excess capacity for local power generation in a local microgrid, or produce about 5,000 gallons per hour of excess renewable fuels. And then the additional material processing of the char into graphite and graphene. Here's just a digital twin This gets a little bit more into the really advanced mass balancing, but we're also capturing atmospheric carbon in the processing and the gas turbine generators. And we're processing those flue gases in our microwave plasma reactors, breaking down the bonds and the char from that into our char bucket. We're also producing renewable fuels, silica, metals, and water. Some of the system's most recent applications include all of these that this has been put to work in. We're integrating proven systems and spent much of last year getting all of the due diligence, techno-economic analysis for our funding approvals to deploy globally. This gets a little too eye chart. I don't want to get into it, but these are all the downstream output products that are pretty exciting. And a bit of our timeline of bringing the company to formation, integration and planning, deployment and financial due diligence, signing a $1 billion opportunity or funding agreement with our financiers in July, just recently signing a $3.3 billion contract with India. We've got quite a lot in our pipeline. The average total cost is about $100 per ton for handling waste. Basically, how we structure ourselves is we'll go into a community, say 500 tons per day is about 200,000 people. And that's about $120 million CapEx. If we get basically contracting 30 years of those waste streams, utilizing that value of that long-term contract, we fund everything. So we bring in the $120 million into that community, or 400 million or $1 billion, it doesn't matter. Essentially, it's the credit capability behind the trash and that long-term contract that allows us to leverage to basically fund it on the front end. And these are some of the areas where we're have our tons per day of 26,000 tons per day in our funnel, and contracted 10,000 tons per day so far in India. And so we're basically and we're putting up operations in the United States, across the United States as a service, and we're licensing it around the world. But right now we're going to be putting up a manufacturing facility for these reactors. So we're going to be extremely busy over the next several years. We're going to be seriously busy. We joke that we're janitors without borders. So I think I'll yield my time, but I just wanted to share some of the technologies and the implementations. Some of the greater advantages of what we would like to do is create what we called our island plan, which includes a universal basic income, similar to like the Alaska Permanent Fund and the distributions that they get every year. And I think that this is an opportunity where that type of that is needed more so than any, because I think a lot of people think that poverty is a lack of morals, but it's just a lack of cash. And so we just identify that and choose humans as the preferred asset class, and invest there. And then with all of your help, make the world more bearable. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Tyler. Handing it off next to Tayyib Smith from Growth Collective.
Thank you, Caitlin. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. One sec. Okay, so I'm based in Philadelphia, which happens to carry the title of being the largest and poorest big city in the US. Speaking directly to what Tyler just said about poverty, oftentimes poverty is seen as a moral or personal decision choice, but it has deep historical, structural, economic barriers that are created and exclude people from capital. So nationally, African-American households versus white-led households have a 10x differential in access to wealth or wealth. Being a real estate developer, and as I mentioned in, I think, in one of our earlier conversations, the disbursement of capital and investment in Black and brown small businesses is, virtually non-existent versus the scale. So a couple of years ago, on this journey to find out how to do development more equitably, I gathered about 9 real estate developers, all African-American, in a room, all being business people operating from scarcity. It took us about 3 months to build the trust to get us to see what we shared in common, and also how certain banks, lending institutions in the city of Philadelphia were speaking to us differently, depending on where we were in our scale. And that's how the Growth Collective was developed. So we use capital to catalyze opportunities for African-American real estate developers. We believe that there needs to be a certain level of cultural competency and relationship with community versus a lot of the historical affordable housing mechanisms. Like Alen mentioned, I think LIHTC earlier. In my city, almost all of the developers who do LIHTC deals are very resourced, and their affordable housing contracts have a 15-year window, a 10 to 15-year window. And they operate in a way that actually make their adjacent properties more valuable. And at the end of that, there's no ability for the communities that are renting in those spaces to build capital, to build wealth, or to remain in place. So all of our philosophies around real estate development is basically, how do you use real estate development as a porthole for positive impact on community? In our current state, we operate partly as a wealth management company for the 7th real estate developers. So we talk to family offices, we talk to lenders and banks, and we give them additional services so that they can basically qualify for deal flow. Obviously, a lot of you know the national issues we have with housing. I think we have a confluence of crises simultaneously at different market prices for housing. Being in a predominantly African-American, the city I live in is 45% African-American, 67% BIPOC, but only 2.3% of the businesses that are owned in the Philadelphia region are Black owned. And of those, there's a minuscule number that actually have the capital access to do larger development projects. So how does that translate to my group? We were able to cobble together about $350 million in deal flow so that we could go out and raise $100 million to invest in those projects. Thus far, we've had some success with the Knight Foundation, Barra Foundation, and a few family offices to take us on that route, and also the reinvestment fund. Something else I want to talk about is, housing is often spoken of in a very cliche way that it's a human right, but there aren't that many mechanisms for regenerative capital access for people to have ownership in the contemporary economy. With the rising mortgage rates and debt rates right now, there's an alarming number of people who frankly will not have access to home ownership or long-term wealth and stability without more imaginative capital products. Just some figures on life expectancy. In Philadelphia, there's a 20-year differential, but depending on zip code and life expectancy. So if you think about that, if you are resourced and you live in a zip code that I live in, the average age is 83. If you, in one of the communities I'm doing development in North Philadelphia, the people are dying on average around 69. Right? And that's also a neighborhood where the area median income block to block is as low as $23,000. I don't know how a family can exist on $23,000 in a major metropolitan city and afford a stable housing. These are my partners. These are our 7 real estate development companies, all Black led. I also have a real estate development arm of my company called Smith and Roller. These are some of my partners in this endeavor. And that's who I am. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you, Tayyib. Next, I'm handing it over to Laura Burgis from Human Value Center.
And I just need to share screen.
Laura.
Wait. I have to say, I'm having so much fun. I hope everyone else is. This is just so energizing. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Burgis. I'm here from the Human Value Center for a peek under the hood, as Jamaica said earlier today, about kind of the kinds of work that we're doing. And I wanted to be able to focus on where my heart energy is really drawing me, and that is well-being economy and well-being projects, inclusive of the inner economy. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about a project that involves a lot of moving parts. I'm hoping for grace and ease in explaining something that's very complex in a more simplistic way. First of all, what is well-being economy? For those who are not familiar with this movement, it's about economies that are capable of supporting long-term well-being of people and planet. And so you can see here an illustration of green space and prioritizing people and planet above GDP. We also will talk a little bit in the next few minutes about inner economy and inner landscape and the way in which we create a well-being economy model, an economic model that is inclusive of the inner landscape. I started working in this space a couple of years ago. This project on Pomona was initiated by the Institute for Ecological Civilization, ecociv.org, if you'd like to look them up, a wonderful think tank, do tank that is global in nature. And they had partnered with the Latina Roundtable, which is a local nonprofit that serves the Latinx populations here in the region and in not just LA County, but also San Gabriel County as well, in helping with social services, job and workforce development, and education as well. We had joined the project because the U.S. Values Alliance, the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, and Wellbeing California came together to provide some infrastructure and to help sort of flesh out this notion of well-being economy. It has been an incredible journey working with these people. In fact, we're starting to video document our process just working together, because it has truly moved from silos to a co-creative process, which we feel collaboration and cooperation is essential for moving forward, and really the most important ingredients if they are values-based. And then the city of Pomona had a city council member who wanted to kickstart the opportunities for worker-owned companies and co-ops. And so this became really the focus project, if you will, for Pomona. And then we learned about CHIRP, and CHIRP is the very first nonprofit solar manufacturing company on the planet. And I'll talk a little bit about their role in this more holistic approach to well-being economy as well. So these are the folks that came to the table. And subsequent to these leaders working together, we've now formed partnerships with the Claremont colleges. We've created student field experiences. We're working with the University of California higher ed system, beginning with UC Santa Cruz, and developing coursework and practitioner-based field experience for students. I also want to talk about one other piece, a financial piece to well-being economy in Pomona, and that is we are in the process of establishing a public bank, and will probably be the 5th or the 6th public bank in California. For those not familiar with a public bank, wonderful resource is publicbankinginstitute.org. That is spelled out, publicbankinginstitute.org. It's not a new concept. It's a very global concept. It is becoming resurrected in the United States, different from Wall Street owned banks and different from credit unions or community banks. This is something that is governed by local people, and the profits stay local, and so that creates new revenue streams for local to spend on new local priorities, different from the general fund, and again, keeping dollars local. So that is an important piece to well-being economy. Getting back to the solar chirp, this is an incredible model. I have a video of a presentation from its founder and CEO. If anyone is interested, let me know. That really walks through the model in great detail. But to give you an understanding of the scope, LA has the boldest sustainability plan in the country. What it means is $30 million of spend and 30 million new solar modules by 2045, and a $5 billion spend leaving our economy. So the solution to that is to keep it local, led by CHIRP. This model is nonprofit. So an example of one of the factories in LA is partnering with the nonprofit Homeboy Industries, which is led by Father Greg Boyle, creating jobs, particularly addressing those who have been affiliated with gangs, don't have access to jobs. Now is a multi-million-dollar nonprofit. They will be a partner to this solar company, thus creating even more jobs. So it's workforce development. It's keeping people local. How do we play into that? The Human Value Center really focuses on culture and culture transformation. We are a tech-based education and training company that works to optimize human potential, both at the personal level and at the collective level. So our hope is to raise consciousness, and that is done in learning environments that are safe spaces for storytelling and story listening, but also building skills and building internal mental muscles, if you will. So we provide a little bit of CrossFit for the soul. Pro-Social World, we've heard a lot about so far today since this morning. Pro-Social World is a partner of the Human Value Center for our Culture Transformation Accredited Professional Credential. So part of our training and education, but it's also really a fundamental theory of change, or our theoretical framework and practical approach when we are working on the hands-on aspects of well-being economy. So let me introduce to you inner economy. This is a new concept that I don't believe you have heard of because we haven't quite gone public on it. This was created by Dr. Lisa Berkeley of UC Santa Cruz, and her organization is the Inner Economy and Compassionate Governance nonprofit. What we're referring to here are the inner resources one gains, uses, and loses in the exchange of daily life. So when we're talking about bringing tools to a community, we really want to address growth in this space so that one is optimizing their energy, optimizing their mental space, their capacity to give, their capacity to receive. It's a lens. And it really reflects an internal state of how one is interacting with the outside world. So what we're teaching in inner economy it's a model of 7 levels of intelligence. It starts with input. It's how we somatically receive information, how our body receives information, how we perceive the world. For those who talk about deep meaning and purpose in whatever form, energetically, spiritually, there is this input, right, that we bring to the world. We receive from the world as well. So what this does is sort of create some indexes as well once these skills are learned, so we can understand the inner health. These are the 7 levels of inner economy that I won't go into great detail here, but essentially what we're bringing is a piece of the well-being economy that hasn't been measured before. And when we say we want to expand beyond GDP, we want to include the environment, we want to include social, I love what's been presented here today. We also need to include the internal. So here enters Human Value Center. We're more or less the connective tissue in these kinds of projects. We're involved with the public bank. We're involved with the group developing the co-op, and we're creating tools to scale to build that inner economy. We ourselves develop these materials with a group of super smart people from all different walks of professional and personal life. We're very aligned in values, and at the end of the day, we're talking about values-aligned approaches that work in the local scenarios. We always begin with values assessments. We particularly like the Barrett tool from the Barrett Value Center. This helps create a space of where we have commonalities, where we have shared values, and where do we have gaps in our community. This is really important at the onset of these kinds of projects, so we have a baseline and we start giving people voice from the get-go. And I've heard some themes today about how important that is. What we're doing in Pomona next, thanks to an ARP grant from the city of Pomona, is we'll be able to run 20,000 people through an app-based, challenge-based program that is specifically addressing mental health and well-being. The first 30-day challenge is on creating a positive mindset. And this is run in Spanish and in English cross-sector. So we have challenges for 25 different nonprofit, social agencies, healthcare, first responders, and they're all working together in these challenges, working on their positive mindset. What that does is it moves them from transactional relationships with one another into more relationship-based engagements, breaking down those silos while also improving themselves and engaging with others. Because it's app-based, we have the ability to scale, to reach 20,000 people in English and 20,000 people in Spanish is very, very exciting for us because we also collect data on the back end. So from a research and metric standpoint, we always believe in managing what we measure. So accountability is important. We can provide all this back end data from zip codes to targeted organizations that we really want to help. So because of this grant, of course, we are inviting all of those who are most impacted by COVID, those who've been most vulnerable historically and socially and economically. And our last challenge is on bringing compassion into the community. And this piece also is infused with live service opportunities for people to work together. And then we do another assessment at the end. We'll also be doing a well-being assessment at the end. I know this is very, I hope it's coming across as clear because I feel like it's confusing. But at the same time, we are leading other people through these trainings so they know how to run these programs on their own. Our goal is scale. And so if we were to do one city like Pomona at a time, it would take us more than our own lifetimes. So we're working with others locally. Pomona has 2 individuals going through our culture transformation accredited professional credential. That is a collaborative with Barrett and with Pro Social World so that they can continue these projects and go on to more cities. That is certainly one of our goals, is to move beyond Pomona and to work with a number of cities with all of those partners that I shared earlier. What happens through the process is we start with data gathering, we engage people, and we create a systemic approach that breaks down those silos, and we're really addressing culture. Culture is like the water and the air that we breathe. It's invisible, and yet it is so life-giving or life-threatening. We create awareness, we build on understanding and acceptance. This is all built on the values that the community, the city at large, determined at the get-go. The app is very integrative with reflection and with positive engagement with one another. We know from neuroscience all of the benefits to the design of this. So it's evidence-based, it's research-based, and again, some really great reports that we can share with the city, as well as each of the organizations that participate. I want to stay mindful of the time here, but these are all of the great things that happen, again, based on the values of the community. This is a way we can scale and reach lots of people, but in meaningful, intentional ways, very high tech, very relevant, very salient for lots of age groups. And at the end of the day, our goal in Wellbeing Economy is to raise consciousness and really shift the collective mindset, but we know it starts with the individual. So all of this work takes place on a personal level, but also in groups and at the collective level. And we really want to be able to tell the story in numbers as well, in terms of Wellbeing Economy and working in the vernacular that cities at large understand when we talk about economy, but creating this awakening about inner economy and the inner self and the critical importance that has for humanity's evolution. So when we think about the US SDG the Sustainability Goals of 2030, we also very intentionally address the inner development goals. And so we are very holistic and in these models, and Pomona is just one of them. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Laura. Handing it off now to Karuna Warren from WaterNow.
Yes, hello everyone. Warm greetings. It's 3:33 p.m. here in Miami, Florida, and really enjoyed all of the presentations so far. So thank you to everyone. Thank you, Jamaica and Katie, for hosting this and the Open Future Forum. Been very informative. So yeah, hi, again, my name is Karuna, and I'm the CEO and founder of WaterNow Inc. We are a 501c3 nonprofit company. And a minute about my background is that I'm actually a civil and environmental engineer with training out of Northwestern University in Chicago and then in Miami, and have done some previously quite a few projects in cities related to civil infrastructure, including Chicago and Miami and parts of New Mexico and Big Bear Lake, California. But now the mission of my company is really to improve infrastructure around clean water and wastewater, particularly, as well as other aspects for Indigenous and underserved communities. And so we've had a few recent projects that I would like to highlight here. And one of them is in the Yawanawa indigenous villages of the Amazon of Brazil. And we got contacted through some ceremonial work I was doing about our company coming out there and providing infrastructure. Specifically, I guess the women who provide water to the communities were traveling for up to 2 to 3 days by boat to get treatment for the water, which was only provided as chlorine to put into the water system. And basically no wastewater system, no energy system. So they also had to travel far distances to get gas. And so I'm going to share that. The other two projects we have going on are Mayan revitalization project in Tulum. I was really impressed by especially Tyler's presentation, because they have a huge landfill problem there in Mexico. And the third major project we're doing now is in Kenya with the East African Women's Water Coalition. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now and talk a little bit about some of the challenges and technical aspects of basically reimagining infrastructure from the beginning. So outside of a city area, more in nature, specifically in the Amazon rainforest, which has been under the news a lot lately due to fires last year, logging, deforestation, and a number of other factors that are challenging to the indigenous communities there. Let's see here, I'm gonna go to share. Okay, so this is our impact report that we finalized this summer We were out there for approximately 33 days in the Brazilian Amazon. It was a 3-day boat ride up the Amazon and Rio Gregorio. This was our team of 5 people that we brought there. And again, we mainly focused on clean water solutions in this presentation. This is Aldea Matum, which we helped to build a community center with them over the past year, providing some resources and et cetera. And this is their main meeting space and community space that they have there. So basically, this indigenous villages, which is about 500 people, have been living for thousands of years with very minimal infrastructure. In fact, just over the past 100 years or so, they've developed some infrastructure. And out of that, they've only had contact with the outside world for approximately 15 years. This is one of the community centers there, and I'll explain a little bit, but what we've installed here, this is a home filtration system here. Basically, the water was all gray water up until industrialization. And then there was a lot of pesticides that were put in the water, partly culturally too. They used to cook, bathe, and swim all in the same water, but it got contaminated. And now there's different things in the water well system and very high E. coli counts. So there's quite a large number of deaths that have been reported, and kids with large stomachs, and et cetera, because of bacteria and other parasites in the water. So we started to basically put a piping system in to install this filtration system. And I'll briefly touch on some of the aspects of why that's been necessary here. This is Ana and Kurawaka. This is inside the community center that was built there. So this is the chief of the territory. His name is Chief Matsini. And he says that they live in a territory, all the indigenous in Brazil, of approximately 200,000 hectares of land. And one thing that we can learn from them is they've kept 95% of their biodiversity intact. So and I felt it impressive that that was their main focus of this. Here, we're helping to develop some new area, and they cleared very sustainably here. They now host diet retreats and other kind of places that are there. And one thing that we really wanted to come in with is a non-colonial mindset into the project, because they have a vast biodiversity here again, where we really wanted to disrupt a minimum amount of nature. Here was a school that we helped to kind of build here. We figured that a lot of the importance became with the education and the kind of younger generation. So we started to teach some about certain things like water systems, why it's important not to pollute the jungle with plastics and et cetera, and basically have a nice place there. So we put a water filtration system in this school as well. This is from one of their ceremonial offerings that they've done here. And they do a lot of prayers around the land and keeping the biodiversity in there. So these are the 3 chiefs, and there's one woman, Page, her name is Wushahu. So here was one of the grandmothers there. We put the first system to her house, this water that's coming out there. Basically, in essence, what we did was piped it we installed a storage tank about 5 or 6 meters high so that it had enough with gravity, and put a solar pump in there. And she was one of the ones that wasn't able to so much walk and do the daily things. So she was super happy that we were able to pipe the system to her house. And basically what we did was installing the solar pump from about a few hundred feet away. We ran this there, and we put the filters down at the bottom of the house here. This was our team that went out there, and had a translator, some other people out there. So let's skip over this team section stuff. Here was our team here. Here's the chief in the middle. That was me there. Here's a few of the local workers that we helped there, because we really wanted to involve them as community stakeholders and not just come in and do a system, but really have them understand it from the beginning. Let's see, here's a solar system that we installed there. Part of the issue was that they had to use gas generators for all their power and to do the filters. So, part of the logistical challenge here was getting all of the panels on these boats, these small boats, out to the middle of the jungle. But we were able to do that, and I believe we set up 16 different panels that power their community kitchen, as well as the solar, the pumps that were in the water wells. And here we were kind of planning out where we were going to put the next solar station. Here was a water storage tank that we installed because basically they didn't have much, if any, storage capability before. So they would just use the local water sources, but now here they have some redundant storage. It is a rainy place about 8 months of the year, but they do have a long dry season. So we put 10,000 liter storage tanks in several different places. Here was kind of our planning process where we sat down with the chief and we're talking about how they want to be a model of sustainability within the Amazon. So we were discussing how we were going to be partnering with them over the next 5 years or so in this process. Here was installing a UV filter, ultraviolet filtration, because it's one of the only ways to clear the water of E. coli and bacteria without using chemicals. There's also a couple other methods like ozone, et cetera. But here we put a large commercial ultraviolet system in that would filter large amounts of water. These are 20-liter containers. And they ended up having a festival of about 1,000 people where we were able to put these filters in for the community centers. Let's see, it looks like I'm running short of time already, but this is one of the filter systems. I was a co-engineer on the system based out of California. It was kind of used in restaurants, even hotels. It's basically a basic 4-phase system with sediment, activated carbon, a water softener in there. Here's the system that one of the workers was installing here, and this was for a community center to serve about 500 people. So one of the things we wanted to really focus on was installation maintenance and functionality. So we have a trip back there planned for next year where we're going to come and re-service there. And we've also trained these guys, like the local workers, to be able to change the filters. This transparent one, once it becomes brown or black, that means it's time to change it out. So one of the biggest things also was integration here. So we wanted to really teach them how to maintenance the system, and it needs maintenance about once a year. So we showed them how the parts fit in, how we could be really, how it could be really self-sustainable. And with this, they ended up being able to use about 100,000 gallons of water before a change. And this was the community system that we helped to build here as well. So yeah, that was pretty much it. We measured quite a bit of impact out there. About 9,000 extra people were able to use clean drinking water per year. We'd put in 3 extra water stations. Per year, we can provide about 3.2 million liters of water out there. We fixed some leaks. And we did all that with about $25,000, which was pretty much a grassroots fundraise. So here, the last topic here I'll touch on before turning it back over is we really felt like it's important to involve community aspects. So this is one of actually the chief's son. And what we did was a community project where kids, led by him, were able to kind of come in and do some painting in the different facilities. So here he put the WaterNow logo and kind of beautifying some of the community centers. So that was pretty much it. I'll go ahead and stop sharing now. Yeah, I want to say thanks again for everyone that was out here, and we're planning to go back to the Brazilian and Ecuadorian Amazon this coming summer. And really, we're working on some biodigester projects as well that will help to put in some wastewater systems to energy. So instead of doing flush toilets because they waste a lot of water back into the river, we started with composting, but now we're going to go towards biodigesters. They also have a small landfill out there that we're figuring out recycling options. So look forward to hearing all the rest of the presentations, and thank you for everyone's attention. And I will look forward to putting some information and following up with others too. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for that, Karuna. Already kind of seeing the weaving start to happen here. Handing it over next to Alexander Svechenko from Restart Ukraine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexander. I come from Ukraine. And I will try to introduce you slightly different contexts, as many of today's presentation were from either North America or America in general. So try to keep the timing and would go for sharing the screen. So Restart Ukraine is a small initiative in terms of it is age. So it's like 7 months since the war has started. 5 months depends on how you count. So I would like to give you a bit more of the context about Ukraine, because it is extremely important not to only look at those things happening right now in my country as such, but also considering what was going on with the country before. So like there was a sequence of major events starting from 1986 within Chernobyl, 1991 the collapse of the Soviet Union, then it is a kind of crisis of 90s, which is very famous and during which a lot of major changes have happened, such as privatization and actually start of the existence of oligarchs, which were controlling a big portion of country's infrastructure and other assets. Then revolution in 2008, revolution war in 2014, which was started. So what do you see now was started in 2014 right now. And in between we had the coronavirus pandemic, and now we have a war. So for me, being born in 1991, there is a kind of major event happening every 4 or 5 years, which gives a certain sense of volatility and defines the horizon of planning and the way of thinking pretty much for those people living in the country. So then, of course, 24th of February, a lot of things have changed. So I just like try to give you a sense of the physical environment where you need to carry on doing your job. However, you are on the move and you leave your country, not a country, a home city. So right now I'm in Ukraine. However, we went through a number of things, and I show you these images not to like, you know, show these scary pictures you see in the news. However, to show that not only those cities which were directly damaged are the ones we need to take care of right now, because like the other ones, they received the IDPs, internally displaced people. So the pressure was widespread and is still widespread all over the country. So what is Restart Ukraine? Restart Ukraine is an NGO, it's a project, but also, first of all, it is a team of young professionals from various disciplines. So we believe in this interdisciplinary approach, where we believe there is a way to introduce new type of urban planning, because the previous type of urban planning is a kind of combination of post-war recovery after World War II, which was organized by the Soviet Union, and which is famous for having this very much top-down and non-inclusive and non-participatory approach in everything, starting from economic, social life, and also the built environment development. So this is an alternative. So it is not like solving challenge by challenge in Ukraine right now, because everything is a challenge right now. Like these days showed to be a major crisis for the energy system. So during like few days with the missile and drones attacks, like 30% of energy system was damaged. And its fact is connected somehow to the topic we're discussing today, and also to the things I will try to open a bit more in my presentation. So we try to focus on few bottlenecks, which we see the most important right now. That right now, during the war, we have a time to be preparing to the recovery after the war, which will be extremely dynamic, fast, and I believe also chaotic. So there is a need for iterative approach. So going really one city by other city, somebody said will be a lifetime and we won't see the results. So we need to somehow hack this system, enabling different settlements to recover simultaneously, providing coordination. So we see our role as a bridge between the international organizations, professional community, and the government, because right now they exist somehow in a bit different bubbles. where the government and the municipalities provide basically the fast response. However, we see things should be connected to this medium and long-term planning. We believe in data collection and analysis. We believe in not only in post-war recovery, but also considering the future uncertainties, which we see some early signs of, and we believe they should be considered as well. Here, where the geography and the scale of the damage is so big, we believe also in the recovery on different scales. So we are pretty much sure we need to switch between national, regional, and local scales a few times back and forth in order to understand the role and the technical brief for the recovery of any of the settlements. And I will go a bit more in the details in further. And the fourth is the combining local and global. From one side, we believe that such a major event in our country, and we are not having all the expertise we need. So we believe we need to attract, but we need to do it wise and with the care and to the local context, because eventually the end beneficiaries are those people who were suffering all these hard times. So they need their voices somehow have to be heard. So after 2022, do we do things at the same time? So we eventually end up in 4 or 5 years with another war or another major event in a negative sense, or we can actually start using new tools, new ways of doing the things. So going specifically to what we suggested and how do we carry on our job, we believe that in silos and different cabinets, rooms, the bureaucrats will be not able to provide a complex response to this situation. So we suggest to look a bit across the sectors, across the silos to the clusters. So we figure out the 9 clusters, which it's not like the order, but it's a sample of clusters where we see different topics to be included and taken care of within the recovery process. So we collect the data, we bring back the people, and we ensure they have the right typology of housing in the right place. And we make sure that the garbage and the debris are not collected to the dump site, but it's kind of recycled and upcycled, which is a huge potential of resource and energy. Then we make sure that we do not quickly fix things, but we try to figure out like what are the future uncertainties, and we incorporate the resilience response strategy to the cities. And then we make sure that we don't build a shopping mall on a place where like sad things happen. So we need to mark those places and protect them as a memory in the built environment. Then we go classically to the plan, finance, participate, and build, but to reach something meaningfully different and not being always reactive, but trying to set up the DNA, which will be proactive and will be resilient, will be able to be more flexible, because like this is our opportunity to recover for decades ahead. However, we see how things are changing right now. So would we be able and ready for the climate change? Would we be able to be prepared for the energy crisis, for the migration crisis, etc. So I go quickly through the slides showing like what type of work we are doing. 3 products: the data geospatial data platform, where we gather data, but we also allow tools to analyze it, a framework like a shopping list for a municipality, how to go through this recovery, ensuring that all the clusters are taken care of, not only the built environment, which is very important right now. And then the pilot case, as an example, one of the cities was selected. So a platform here is a algorithm which has 2 levels, the national level and the local level. So on the national level, there is a number of 4 layers group where we can overlay different data, and I will share later on the link so you can look at the prototype. But at the end, when we look at this first layer, first level, we can understand for which circumstances we need to recover the cities. Because like here you see 3/4 of the land and sea border is with Russia and Belarus. So how do we act accordingly? And then of course, providing for urban planners, local and those who want to help, and there's a lot of them from the outside. So to make a common way, a common platform, so the professionals can have a synergy and cooperate together. And there is a framework which goes through 3 phases, where we see that, as I described, we need to make sure people who are Ukraine are covered with basic needs and they are able to leave these hard times. And then we make sure we bring back people who left, because like 1/3 of population have moved either internally or externally. And then we sit down before we build these mega projects and we assess like what was really preventing quick evacuation, what was really the bottleneck. And we make sure we incorporate those spatial risk places or points of growth in the future in development projects. So this is the logics. And then we go through this pilot project, which is a city in the north, which was occupied like in a week after the war has started. So we analyze it not only a city on the level of city on the level of the country from different sides, economic, environmental, also demographic. It was the less dense populated place in Ukraine before the war. Right now, it will be even worse. So how do we stimulate it? How do we not make it a gray zone? And then we go to the regional level, and there is also a number of settlements depending on this city, for instance, and other local economy chains. So we make sure that it is recovered, considering all those links and ties. The evacuation routes as well. Here, the bottleneck was the bridge across the river, a small thing which was not like well thought through before because it wasn't seen as a risk. But right now we see that to evacuate 250,000 people, we need somehow different routes. And blue water infrastructure, risks, potentials, and then we went, I give a very short summary here, it is much bigger and longer. However, we come out with an alternative option how to recover the city, not rebuilding it as it used to be, with some nicer buildings and more energy efficient. Energy efficiency is good, however, it doesn't change really things much on this city scale. So we believe using these three tools is possible for all the municipalities and cities in Ukraine, so it can be scaled up to the level of the country, actually providing this bridge, as I said, between the international organizations starting to enter the country, the local professionals which are not yet in the game, and the government which is seeing things a bit narrow. However, they have a lot of job to do right now, so nothing to blame them for. So it was 5 months, a relatively small team working mainly on the support from the international organizations. And now, like what next, we expand to a core team who will be working more deep with these 3 products, trying to make them available, trying to make them deep enough, complex. Presenting here, I'm really keen to look for partnerships, different cooperations, and this is really a new audience to connect with. So I will stop here, and I believe there will be a space for the Q&A and discussion in the later phase of this event. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Alexander. So we are going to get kind of right up into the edge of discussion. Our next session, just before we hand it off, to provide some prompts and some additional context. One, you're welcome to start popping into the chat anything that you specifically think that you have that might be able to be a resource to any of these projects, or any particular needs from any of these projects. And I also will prompt that our next session, conveniently enough, is on funding community resilience. and will be completely just kind of a roundtable discussion around problem solving. How do we resource projects exactly like these? And so I do welcome and invite those who are here who have the ability to stick around for that next session. We'll have a bit more spaciousness for the discussion then. But let's continue with the folks presenting here. So up next, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Gajanan to share the free hospital model that you're working on.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. And it's been a wonderful start hearing a lot of different projects which have been ongoing, which have been working more towards the sustainability, resilience with a lot of principles on compassion, collaboration, and even speaking about the ARC. So let me just share my screen and give a small overview on what we are working on. So I'm Dr. Gajanan. I am one of the many volunteers in Sri Sathya Sai Premaarpitham Foundation. So this is a foundation which has the vision of live to serve. The mission of this foundation, which we are all part of, is to create a sustainable and a scalable platform for the like-minded to come together and selflessly serve the underserved. And the basic value is to build a world where everyone lives in love, where love is at the core and periphery of all that we do.
Well, Dr. Gajanan, are you trying to share something on the screen right now? It's looking like it's blank, so just making sure.
Yeah. Is the screen visible?
It's just black. Maybe you'll want to stop and then restart.
Yeah, I can do it. Is the screen visible?
Not for me. Are others? Is anybody else able to? No.
No. It's just loading. Maybe it's a connection issue.
Okay, I'll just stop this share and reshare it once again.
If it doesn't work this time, also, if you want to try email it, you can just quickly email it over to me and I can pull up a screen share.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay,
I can,
perfect.
yeah, surely do it. Yeah, I have emailed it to you.
Perfect, thank you. I'll pull that up as soon as I receive it.
Yeah, so just to continue with the work which we have been doing. So here in India, I got inducted into this concept of love all, serve all back in my school days, where I was studying in an institution which gave me education for free. So growing up and becoming a doctor, it felt like a responsibility to give back to the society what I received during my schooling years and also during my study time my years of medicine. And later on, as we all know, COVID was one of the most unforeseen challenges which we all faced globally. And it was then when we realized that there was a huge hunger catastrophe which was happening, and there were lakhs and lakhs of people who were actually having difficulty in even receiving basic resources in terms of affordability, in terms of accessibility, or even in terms of availability of basic resources. And that is when, back in 2019-20, it was a couple of like-minded people who came together, and we thought that it's most important that if those people who aren't even receiving food, if they receive food, they can strive. And even if we can extend this by one day, every day, those people can, start changing their lives. And hence, the whole concept of helping people with nutrition and to even sustain that came into picture. It started with serving food for 5 people, then it extended to 10, and from 10 it became 100, and from 100 to 1,000. And for the past 2 years, the whole mission of giving free nutrition to those who are having much difficulty in their affordability and accessibility for food, we have currently reached more than 6 lakh. Although this is not a statement of pride, because there are crores more who are in need of it, and we are only reaching just lakhs. So to continue on this mission of sustaining nutrition and even healthcare, an area was chosen in the outskirts, in the rural area of Bangalore, where it was easier for us to map the unmapped population and set up a multi-specialty hospital which would help people receive health care and treatment for free. So the whole concept which currently has come into play is the whole hospital runs by the volunteers. It is not basically a give and take, it's more of serve. So there is in the next, probably in the third or the fourth slide from this, there is a beautiful diagram which depicts the model how the hospital runs. In the first level, what basically happens is that the health volunteers go to the community and identify the people who are in need of doctors. And in the hospital, there is a day-wise specialty-based approach which is being followed, where every specialist visits the hospital in a specific day in the week. And the health volunteers who go to the community redirect them to the hospital. And in the hospital, the doctors prescribe the medications and treat the patient for free. And even when the health volunteers go to the community and they are in need of assistance, there are collaborative specialist tele-assistance which happens in real-time scenarios. And all this happens by service which is being provided by like-minded doctors. We have a bunch of 30 doctors who are functioning in different specialties. And for each doctor, it is 1 day in a month who gives their time 1 day in a month for service. And that is how the model is running. And once this comes into the mind of people who are receiving the healthcare, they get excited that they also want to be part of this mission, and they start going with the health volunteers for screening. And that is how the whole boundaries are being increasing so that more and more villages, more and more rural population comes in the umbrella of this healthcare mission. And also, same way at the end of health volunteers, similarly, at the end of doctors also, the same concept is being increasing, that one doctor comes once in a month to serve, and some other doctor knows that, yes, there is an opportunity to serve people who are actually in need of healthcare. And that is how more and more doctors are also pitching in. And our next vision is to increase this to even a mobile hospital, where a hospital can go to different villages and there the healthcare can be served for free. And this has been a vision which has already been materialized and in place by Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, whose principles we have been trying to inculcate in building upon this healthcare mission, and also to sustain nutrition along the time to come. So this is a brief overview of our foundation, Sri Sathya Sai Premaarpitham Foundation, which has been built and which thrives on the principle of love all and serve all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Handing it over now to Deborah Marton from the Van Alen Institute.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Katie and Jamaica, and thank you all for your inspiring presentations, any of which we could have talked about for the entire 2 hours here. So let me screen share. Okay. Do you all see the orange thing there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Van Alen Institute is a 128-year-old design nonprofit. We're based in New York City, and we work to create more equitable cities through community-led inclusive design. On the subject of civic infrastructure, we think about how resources get distributed within cities as fundamental to civic infrastructure. So what's our strategy? We partner with leaders of historically excluded communities to understand their vision for the places where they live. And then we support that vision through our network, our knowledge, and our resources. The way we work is by shaping professionally diverse, interdisciplinary teams where we share our tools and resources with those teams, as do the other participants. We manage projects and we build cross-sector public-private coalitions. We also invest our own funds, and since the beginning of the pandemic, we've invested almost $4 million in our work, off of the largest part of it in various pandemic recovery projects. Now it doesn't want to advance. Let's try it again. I'm sorry, all seem to be frozen. Here we go. Okay. So why do we work this way? By centering community in everything we do, our inclusive design method gives form to community vision. And our process responds to the urgent need for social justice in city making, which most every speaker today has touched on that in one way or another, some quite explicitly and some as parts of the systems that go into city making, or let's call it settlement making, community making. We all have known for a long time now that cities don't work well for historically excluded communities. And probably many of you have observed, although New York City and other municipalities may work in good faith to ensure people living in poverty enjoy the benefits of residency, including a functional and culturally dignified public realm, the reasons why cities don't work well for everyone are systemic, historic, and persistent, and that all of that has been touched on today. In the context of the pandemic, for example, safe reopening recovery services weren't reaching historically excluded communities fast enough or with the depth of impact necessary to save lives and preserve local businesses here in New York City. And the gap between municipal effort and intent and the impact isn't new. Everyone has observed that. And there are many reasons for the gap: limited access to overall municipal long-term planning efforts, under-resourced staffing, poor internet access, language barriers, and obviously at the heart of everything, a lack of financial resources. At the heart of the challenge, exacerbating and magnifying it, is grossly inadequate access to the kind of cross-disciplinary and socioeconomically diverse learnings and resources necessary to operate effectively within the complex systems that drive change in the built environment. Without access to this ecosystem of knowledge, historically excluded communities struggle to exercise their agency, a word that's been used a lot today, and bring about the change that they know their communities require for quality of life and economic well-being. So this is our model. It's another way of looking at what I just described of how we work. And it's the inverse of how things usually happen in New York City and in many other municipalities, in the sense that community is at the center and change originates within the communities that we work with. They are the experts in their own needs, their strengths, and their assets. And then Van Alen, our institution, works as a connector. So this is a program that we kicked off at the beginning of the pandemic, and I want to share this with you as an example of how what I just described actually works. We piloted the method that you just saw, which in this diagram, through this program, which, like I said, launched in the beginning of March 2020 in collaboration with another nonprofit here in New York City, the Urban Design Forum. the program was designed to support community leaders in their efforts to survive literally and economically. And these are just some statistics about the program to date. But rather than telling you about this program, I'd like to share a video where our program partners from the communities that the map on the right, for those of you who've not familiar with New York City, this is Manhattan, the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn, and blue are the communities that we partnered with for this program. And I'll share this video with you. And let me know if you can't hear it.
You're coming into communities that, by and large, for the most part, are the victims of decades of disinvestment from government that is really rooted in racial inequities and policies that are rooted in racial oppression and discrimination. So many of these communities have not had some of the baseline investments and resources that for other parts of New York City neighborhoods are considered standard.
And as an example, we're number 62 out of 62 counties with the worst health outcomes. We have some of the worst unemployment rates and some of the highest eviction rates. The pandemic only exacerbated those inequalities. And in the midst of all that, we've been organizing to support, our small businesses.
Currently, the community is struggling, is one of the hardest hit. Bed-Stuy is one of the hardest hit by the pandemic. We were a hotbed for the virus. Unfortunately, we lost a lot of community members and leaders in the community. We have a high unemployment rate, which was exacerbated, of course, by the COVID virus.
And we were truly in need of a way to bring our community together to start talking about how we survive. How does our small businesses survive through COVID?
I see this program as helping preserve jobs. We only had one restaurant that applied for the open restaurants, but they had not done anything. And through the team, it looks like we might have of the restaurants in our South Side participating. And we are moving toward doing like an open street as well. So that's something that wouldn't have happened without their team support.
But certainly having the advice and the counsel of your team has been a tremendous resource.
There were a lot of short-term, really powerful interventions. I mean, we had folks, our partners, that were really critical in actually getting businesses up and running, right? We did safe reopening, we did signage, we did trainings for our businesses to try to apply for loans. I mean, that was really critical.
But I want to say that this collaborative has been wonderful. It has created a sense of camaraderie among the businesses, among many of the organizations, to give them some hope that there are strategies that they can put in place to survive and to thrive in the midst of COVID.
Our organization has been fighting for a really long time to do many of these things. And now within like 3 weeks, these like incredible team is like, well, we're just talking to this person and they just donated all the stuff. And like this, like, oh my gosh, okay. This is amazing. And like, wow.
It is, I think, a model that should be replicated throughout not only the city, but probably the nation.
The beauty of what has come out of this partnership is the ability to get the minds and the smartness and the expertise of individuals that we would not on our own have had the ability to bring together to make these kinds of strategies available to our residents.
I think one of the keys here is that the team did not come with a prescribed notion of how this had to be done. They worked collaboratively with us and were able to come up with solutions for our specific problem.
So we have pockets of hope, but we still have a long way to go to really create equitable recovery in our neighborhood.
It's the public-private partnerships that we create right now that's going to help sustain our businesses and the economy of our communities across the city.
So, there we go, frozen again. Making that Marge Simpson noise. All right, I'm going to stop the share and reshare. There we go. Okay. So the short-term outcomes you heard described, they were things like improving outdoor spaces, fabricating restaurant extensions, upgrading HVAC systems. Then in 2021, we evolved the program with the support of Wells Fargo beyond a rapid response program. So this current phase focuses on deepening partnerships and advancing projects that forge long-term neighborhood resilience. So in the bottom right, that's Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. It's a winter wonderland now going into its third year. It's receiving independent funding. Similarly, on the bottom left, that's Washington Heights. Our community partner there, Community League of the Heights, is getting now in the third year support from a local hospital to do a neighborhood program to support small businesses throughout the neighborhood. And on the top left, that's Chinatown. And that's a night market that was launched at the beginning, now just concluded its third year. And it's also receiving now funding from a local bank. And I will leave you with this, which is a 1-minute video about the night market, which is now a huge effort and celebration of authentic Chinatown cuisine and crafts in New York City.
Thank you so much for coming out. The whole team really came together to make this happen for us, and so many volunteers, so thank them all.
During COVID, it just became like a ghost town. All Chinatowns across the country are really experiencing a lot of anti-Asian hate. Something like this night market is an actual opportunity for people to feel good about being in the community again, to sort of show that they're not afraid.
Being at the Chinatown's night market is just a wonderful feeling because you see so much excitement and amazing turnout.
This night market is a renaissance for Chinatown.
So just in closing, I want to say nothing that we did would have happened without the collaboration with our community partners. Everything you saw was ground up. And I think that's what I'm hearing from everyone today. So I look forward to continuing the conversation with many of you. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Deborah. So I will admit then when I initially reached out to Bob to share today, he said, well, I don't know. I think that the presentations are probably going to take up the whole time. So I don't know if we're going to have time. And you were a little bit more correct than I thought. So I would still love to hand it off to you, Bob, to kind of crescendo this discussion, because I know that your work has covered kind of a lot of weaving across many of the categories mentioned here, and perhaps you can bring us in with a bit of a provocation into the next session. And again, that next session is more of a participatory roundtable around resourcing. And so I think that can be a good continuation for those who can stick around. And we'll also reach out with other opportunities to reconnect as a group after this week as well to continue the conversation. So over to you, Bob, and thank you all.
Well, first of all, thank you all for this brilliant work. And I think what I'd like to do, I want to share a story, but I want to encourage all of you to put more in chat and think about what each of you can do in terms of radical collaboration to connect with and assist or accelerate or strengthen a lot of the phenomenal work we've just heard about. And I made some notes myself, and I think I need 2 days to follow up with many of you to really get a better idea of what you're doing. But I would like to give you a couple of thoughts. One of which is I have now worked in 12 communities in a post-natural disaster environment. And what I have discovered is what happens when that kind of an event occurs, it just exposes the disasters that were already built into the community. It's all the wrong minuses, the bad decisions, et cetera, that have been made to get revealed by nature. And so I would like to challenge each of you on this incredible work you have shared to think about what might aggressive climate change do to change your current Escalent program, and what can the work of others we've heard from today do to accelerate and strengthen your work and the outcomes that you seek. So I just again have to celebrate the kind of heart and courage and investment that has been shared. It's mind-boggling. I want to leave with that primary thought, but think about the unintended. What haven't we addressed? In spite of the great work that is happening, what might derail this, or what might we share with another one of these initiatives that will accelerate it and make it more durable, more impactful, more transformative? So maybe that's a good place for me to leave it to the rest of you.
Thanks so much, Bob. Yeah, so again, before we head over, if you have any particular reflections or needs or resources to offer based on what you heard, be sure to leave those in the chat. We'll be saving the chat. And again, we'll follow up as well with both with everyone who is in this conversation for opportunities for ongoing. Now that we all have the basic, just the basic sketch, there's much deeper to go together here. And so we'll follow up with additional opportunities. And I'm going to pause the recording now as we head into the next conversation. But the next conversation is on funding community resilience, and it's right here in the same room. And so we'll get to talk about how do we resource these projects we just heard about, essentially. So stick around if you're interested in being a part of that discussion. That's a bit more of a participatory roundtable, although highlighting a handful of particular voices. And that'll be facilitated by Greg Wendt.